Yeah, no, but for Dakota, it's a different thing. You know, she was literally in those scenarios for real. She's, you know, tied up, she's exposed, she's naked.
In Hollywood, where illusion and reality often blur so seamlessly that audiences and the media alike struggle to separate fact from fabrication, it is hardly surprising that even the most fleeting of gestures can ignite a storm of speculation. And Sam Heughan, the charismatic Scottish actor known across the globe for his magnetic portrayal of Jamie Fraser in the beloved television series Outlander, found himself at the heart of such a storm when an innocent moment at a glittering film premiere in Los Angeles was transformed by tabloids into a supposed love affair with Dakota Johnson, the luminous star of 50 Shades of Grey who, despite her own illustrious career and identity beyond that franchise, has long been the subject of media fixation regarding her personal life, her relationships, and the lineage of her famous family. The evening itself had begun innocuously, with Sam invited as a guest of honor and Dakota attending as part of her ongoing promotional commitments. And though the event was one of many on the Hollywood calendar, a single moment in which Sam leaned towards Dakota, whispering something that drew laughter from her lips, was frozen by a paparazzo's camera and instantly cast across social media platforms as if it were evidence of a burgeoning romance, the accompanying headlines boldly declaring them Hollywood's latest golden couple, merging fantasy with reality by pairing Outlander with 50 Shades, a concoction so sensational that it seemed tailor-made for clicks, likes, and endless reposts. And yet what was perhaps most telling was how swiftly the fan communities fractured in response, some euphoric at the thought of this unlikely union, their imaginations painting Sam and Dakota as the new embodiment of glamour and passion, others heartbroken or disillusioned, particularly the loyal supporters of Sam's on-screen partnership with Katrina Balfe, whose chemistry with Sam as Claire Fraser had fueled years of speculation about whether their fictional love story might have an echo in reality, while a third faction remained skeptical, insisting that the entire frenzy was little more than smoke without fire, a construct of hungry tabloids and overzealous fans. Nevertheless, in an age where perception often outweighs truth, the silence of both Sam and Dakota only amplified the noise. For their refusal to comment was not taken as dignity or patience, but instead interpreted as confirmation by some, fueling a wave of hashtags, TikTok, edits, and fan pages, with one particularly viral phenomenon being the sudden rise of Samoda Forever accounts, which combined images of the two into montages that made them appear inseparable, all of which Sam observed with quiet dismay from his flat in London, where one evening, surrounded by unanswered messages from colleagues, friends, and even concerned relatives asking if the whispers were true, he set his phone aside, poured himself a glass of red wine, and contemplated the absurdity of living within an industry where narratives were so frequently imposed upon him rather than created by him. And though he held nothing but respect and admiration for Dakota, recognizing her wit, her skill, and her resilience in carving her own path, he knew in his heart that theirs had been nothing more than a collegial interaction, yet still he felt the weight of being cast against his will in yet another romantic drama scripted not by himself, but by the insatiable appetite of media machinery. Dakota, meanwhile, faced her own quandary when confronted directly during an interview in New York by a journalist who, unable to resist probing, asked with an air of feigned casualness whether she might elaborate on her connection to Sam Heughan, pointing out that they had seemed remarkably close at the recent event, and though Dakota smiled her characteristically enigmatic smile, composed and poised as she replied that Sam was indeed a wonderful colleague, whose work she admired and whose presence she enjoyed, she made it clear that admiration was all that there was between them, a response which any reasonable listener would have accepted as both gracious and conclusive, yet the press, true to form, twisted her words into headlines that screamed, Dakota, I admire Sam, and Dakota admits to feelings for Sam, thereby stoking the flames rather than quelling them. And so it came to pass that Dakota herself was compelled to pick up the phone and ring Sam, exasperated as she exclaimed, Sam, this is crazy. I was just telling the truth and they twisted it. To which he responded with the calm resignation of one well-versed in the fickle patterns of celebrity culture. I know, Dakota, We need to do something about it. Recognizing that if left unchecked, the rumors would continue to grow, mutating into narratives neither of them desired. Their plight, in truth, was emblematic of a wider phenomenon that has long plagued Hollywood, where whispers become headlines, headlines become convictions, and the convictions of strangers who know neither the people nor their hearts become burdens carried daily by those thrust into the spotlight. And one cannot ignore how much this dynamic reflects society's hunger for myth-making, for constructing fairy tales of love, betrayal, and intrigue around those whose profession is to perform, but who are often denied the dignity of living private lives outside the screen. And so, while Sam pondered the irony of being made into a protagonist in a romance he never authored, Dakota, too, wrestled with the frustration of being cast in yet another role by the media, one that conflated admiration with desire, professionalism with intimacy, leaving her caught between the truth she spoke and the fiction that sold. The situation also illuminated how quickly fan culture can become both supportive and suffocating, for while many adored the thought of Sam and Dakota together, producing montages and edits that painted them as soulmates, others hurled criticism at Dakota for supposedly intruding on the imagined sanctity of Sam and Katrina's connection, an odd but telling reflection of how fictional narratives can colonize the public's imagination to such a degree that boundaries between actors and characters are erased. And this confusion, while deeply unfair to the individuals concerned, speaks to the immense power of modern fandoms in shaping public discourse, aided by the instantaneous spread of social media, where nuance is lost, context ignored, and the simplest gesture, a whisper, a laugh, a shared glance, is elevated to scandal. In this maelstrom, Sam's silence was perhaps his only shield, a refusal to dignify the absurdity with words, though he also understood that silence has its own consequences, often interpreted not as resistance, but as acquiescence. And so when Dakota, with a sense of urgency, urged that they act, it became clear to both that if they did not assert their truth, the world would continue writing theirs for them, and the dilemma extended beyond their personal discomfort into larger questions about agency, authenticity, and the right of any human being, no matter how famous, to define their own story rather than have it dictated by the relentless theater of gossip. For though Hollywood has always been a fertile ground for love stories woven out of fleeting glances and casual encounters, and though audiences will always hunger for tales of unlikely couples, the reality for Sam and Dakota was far more ordinary, grounded in mutual respect rather than passion, collegial warmth rather than romance. And yet it is often the ordinariness of truth that cannot compete with the extraordinary allure of rumor, which is why this episode, like so many before it, revealed not only the volatility of celebrity culture, but also the vulnerability of those caught within it, people whose real feelings, friendships, and boundaries are constantly at risk of being misrepresented, commodified, or...
You're energetic this morning.
You hungry?
Very.
After several days of suffocating silence in which rumors, speculations, and endless online debates about his supposed romance with Dakota Johnson spread like wildfire across every corner of social media and tabloid headlines, Sam Heughan, the Scottish actor renowned worldwide for his role as Jamie Fraser in Outlander, reached a breaking point and decided he could not endure the suffocating vortex any longer. With his reputation, privacy, and even sense of self beginning to feel like they were slipping away under the pressure of narratives written not by him but by gossip columnists and restless fans, he picked up the phone and contacted his management team to insist upon taking control of the story, demanding that they arrange a live interview in which he would confront the rumors head-on and present the truth with honesty, clarity, and dignity. Though his manager, seasoned in the ruthless machinations of the entertainment industry, immediately objected vehemently, warning him that such direct denials often backfired in Hollywood because audiences, journalists, and even loyal fans tended to interpret strong refusals as evidence of something being hidden, the old adage that where there's smoke there must be fire, being a mantra that tabloids thrive upon, and her advice was to allow the storm to run its course until interest waned, because silence, though painful, could sometimes be the safest course. Yet Sam, who had always valued authenticity over manipulation, who had never been entirely comfortable with the artifice of publicity games, looked straight into her eyes and with quiet conviction said, "I want to be honest with the audience. I don't want people to think I am using Dakota's name or anyone else's to gain attention. It's time to come clean." A statement that carried not just the weight of his frustration, but also his innate respect for the craft of acting and for the fans who had supported him, because to him integrity mattered more than letting rumors fade on their own. And so the decision was made to stage the fateful interview on live television, an event that millions of viewers across the world would tune into with bated breath, many expecting either a confession that would confirm their fantasies or a denial that would challenge them, yet all certain that something momentous was about to be revealed. The evening of the interview arrived, and as Sam walked onto the studio set, the lights blazing down upon him, the cameras trained on his every movement, he carried himself with the same calm composure that had made his characters so admired, answering the opening questions from the host with ease, speaking warmly about his career, his recent projects, and the artistic challenges he had embraced, his charm disarming and his manner unflustered. But then, inevitably, the question everyone had been waiting for came, hanging in the air like a final drumbeat before revelation. "Sam, there are a lot of rumors surrounding your relationship with Dakota Johnson. Can you be honest with the audience?" And in that moment, after a pause that seemed to stretch on for eternity, Sam looked directly into the camera lens, his gaze steady, his voice warm but firm, and said, "I want to make it clear once and for all. Dakota Johnson is a wonderful actress, a wonderful person, and I respect her greatly, but we are not in a relationship. Any rumors about our love are completely false." Words that cut through the noise with the sharpness of truth, leaving the studio momentarily hushed in disbelief, the host visibly surprised, and audiences at home stunned by the simplicity and finality of his statement. Because in a world where celebrities often dance around speculation, his candor was both shocking and refreshing, and he went further still, adding, "I don't want my audience or Dakota's fans to be fooled by stories that are not true. We all deserve to know the truth." A plea that revealed not only his frustration but also his deep sense of responsibility towards the millions who invest emotionally in the lives of those they admire. What followed was nothing short of a media earthquake, for as soon as the interview ended, clips of his statement were uploaded, reposted, and shared millions of times across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and countless fan forums, the headlines erupting with proclamations such as shocking, "Sam Heughan officially denies his affair with Dakota Johnson," and "What did Sam really say about Dakota?" The whole truth behind the rumors, with newspapers scrambling to capitalize on the fervor and talk shows dissecting his every word, gesture, and tone, while fans across the globe split into factions yet again, some breathing a sigh of relief that Sam had finally been granted peace and that the truth was now established, others skeptical still, convinced that his denial was a performance, that his words were a smokescreen masking a hidden romance, proving how stubbornly the human imagination clings to its own narratives even when confronted with reality. Yet what truly helped to calm the chaos was the fact that Dakota herself, unwilling to leave Sam to shoulder the burden of truth alone, took to Instagram with a short but heartfelt video in which she looked directly into the camera, her voice calm and unwavering, saying, "I want to thank Sam for speaking the truth. We are friends, colleagues, and will always respect each other. I hope everyone will focus on our artistic work instead of baseless rumors." A message which not only mirrored Sam's honesty but also underscored the mutual respect and solidarity between them, a synchronization that finally began to ease the storm of public opinion, showing the world that rather than fueling gossip, they stood united in rejecting it. Afterwards, when the frenzy had subsided into quieter ripples, Sam found himself sitting alone in a quiet room, reflecting upon the tumultuous days that had passed, the messages, the interviews, the noise that had felt at times deafening, and he realized with a depth of clarity that the life of a star is not merely about the halo of glamour, red carpets, and adulation, but is also threaded with invisible challenges, the constant scrutiny, the relentless need to manage narratives that others attempt to write for you, the delicate balance between public and private, and in his solitude, he put these reflections into words on his personal page, writing, "Rumors can explode from a glance, a smile, and ruin a career if not controlled. I am always grateful for the audience's attention, but I hope everyone understands. We are only human. Please love and support us through our works instead of believing in fabricated stories," a sentiment that resonated deeply not only with his fans but also with fellow actors and public figures who recognized their own struggles in his words. For beyond the specifics of his situation lay a universal truth about modern celebrity culture. That in the digital age, where every photo is a potential headline and every silence a supposed confession, authenticity itself becomes a radical act. And perhaps that is why Sam's decision to speak openly, to confront the storm rather than let it pass, carried such weight, because it was not merely a denial of a single rumor, but a quiet rebellion against an entire system that profits from turning ordinary human interactions into spectacles of scandal, a reminder that behind the lights, the glamour, and the stories we consume so hungrily, there are people yearning simply to be seen truthfully.